The following feature presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
Power on. It's showtime.
Boldly go where no one has gone before.
Warp 1, engage!
Welcome to a journey through time, space, and pop culture. A journey through a career in the special effects industry. Welcome to the Max EFX Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Toft. Welcome back to the Max EFX Podcast, where we go behind the scenes of many films, TV shows, and commercials with special effects artist Max Cervantes. This is episode 11, and we're going to be talking to Max and some of his coworkers today. Hey, Max, how's it going?
Hey, Kevin. Great to be here and great to hear you. And it's great to be here with all my, well, not all of my, but quite a few of my coworkers here.
Sounds exciting. Tell me what's going on today, man.
Well, today we are going to talk about the recent hit movie from Paramount, Jackass Forever, and talking about our work on Jackass.
Oh my gosh. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we spent so much time in doing this so quickly to get a roughly 25-foot square model of a city, all done for this movie. I mean, it's just amazing how much work went into it.
All right, well, I got it. Well, let's go behind the scenes of Jackass Forever, and why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie, and then what they wanted you guys to do, and take it away, guys.
Well, to start, let me introduce everybody. First of all, I'm going to introduce my buddies who worked with me at Vision Scenery here in Los Angeles to build this magnificent model. First, I'm going to introduce you to my buddy, Bobby Doran. Bobby is basically in charge of our paint department and final art direction on paint, as well as an incredibly skilled model maker and craftsperson. Bobby, why don't you quickly tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, this is Bobby. Hi, everybody. I am just a local Southern California artist, designer, creator, maker that happens to work currently in the motion picture industry, or the set building industry here with Max and the others. And but I've tried just about everything in the artistic world. So I've dabbled in a little bit of this and a little bit of that over the years. But lately I've been doing a lot of props and sets and things like that. Okay,
and now let's hear from you, Jeff. This is my buddy Jeff Cupernell. And Jeff, why don't you briefly tell us about yourself?
I've been a professional model maker since about 96, and currently working at Vision Scenery with you guys, at least it on and off, how it works,
like the rest of us, on and off,
like the rest of everybody. But yeah, so I've been in the industry for quite a while. Started out as a Foley artist.
Wow, you did.
Wow.
And you made the big jump from behind the screen behind the screen with a microphone to record Foley to working behind the screen doing model making.
Yep.
Okay, Nikki, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself then?
Well, hi, I'm Nikki. I'm 26, so I'm like one of the youngest people at Vision in our department. I started trying to get my foot in the door with set construction and design for a theater. And I got bored in college, so I bought a 3D printer. And years later, I'm working for Vision and also Atomic Ant Creations.
Awesome. Okay, so Bobby, you were already on board the project for Jackass. So could you tell us a little bit how the project started?
Sort of. Yeah, I usually just come in. I don't come in with the bidding process or anything like that. So the project was already decided when I came in, but I helped a little bit with the design aspect, had the layout. What we did was we built a town. And I don't remember the total number of buildings, but it was over 100.
A lot. Yeah, I mean,
maybe more. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, some of the bigger buildings in the background, the skyscrapers and such, were just made out of foam core, which we printed out big graphics on. And so, because they're seen further in the back, you don't see them as much, and
levels
they're big
of
skies.
detail,
Yeah,
right?
so levels of details. Yeah, the stuff that's closer to the camera, stuff that we knew that we'd be close to, we spent a lot more time on. I remember, Bobby, were you part of the process when they decided they were going to have us make replicas of certain specific buildings that are on the Paramount lot, which they filmed in front of, because there was at one point the idea that they might put those buildings into the miniature. So they wanted us to build copies of those buildings.
Yeah, and they kept talking about that early on, but then unfortunately not telling us which buildings they were going to do.
Yeah. But the movie made a ton of money over the weekend. It made some like $23 million just over the weekend.
It made back its budget.
Wow.
So
we back up a little bit on the genre Jackass the movie. This is a third movie in a series, right?
Right.
And the premise is essentially the same as the previous two movies, right? Nothing changed.
As far as I know, yeah.
I'm just asking because we're talking about the early stages here. Do they come and kind of tell you? They just say make this, or do they tell you what the movie's about? We're going to do a bunch of stunts.
They generally don't. They give us as little information as possible. Like you found out in the fact that they wouldn't tell us which buildings they were going to film in front of, but yet they wanted us to make models of it. Basically, actually, we're told
it's the fourth in the franchise. Let me get that out. Sorry about
that. They basically tell us, we need you to build this model. We need to be able to do X, Y, and Z with the model. But beyond that, how it fits into the greater storyline of the movie, they don't tell us that.
And do they really have a storyline? It just seems like mayhem, sequences of mayhem, right?
Right.
Yes. A bunch of friends get together and hurt themselves or each other.
There it is.
Yeah.
You know what?
That
that right there might be the world-class description of a Jackass movie right there.
Right.
Are you in, Jeff?
I haven't seen it yet. This is Bobby, but from the trailer and the snippets I've seen online, it looks like they're really trying to introduce new actors to come in and take over their positions.
The next generation.
Yeah. I think a lot of them are injured permanently.
Yeah. I'd heard over the weekend on the radio, one of the local LA stations I was listening to in the morning, they were talking about that Johnny Knoxville has been told point blank by some of his doctors that if he takes too many more blows to the head, he could end up being paralyzed for life.
Yeah, that would be enough for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's smart for them to do this, bring in some other people and let the other ones just like sit on the guidelines and watch and guide things along. But
most of them have had enough concussions that they're probably at risk for Parkinson's, and I'm not even joking about
that. Right.
No, sadly. I mean, it's as bad as what has happened with a lot of top name NFL players from the past, too many blows to the head. But so one of the key things we then early found out is that the model needed to be built with sort of roadways that could be lifted out and removed for filming purposes. And then as we investigated and found out more, we found out why. It's really rather embarrassing to say, but
okay, keep it clean.
Yes, one of the cast members had agreed to allow to have a certain part of his body painted green and made to look like a dinosaur so that it could be seen being pulled through the streets as if it was going to attack these buildings, a la a certain Japanese monster movie franchise.
I feel like it might be an appropriate time to ask if you guys have seen this yet.
I have seen I've seen it on like YouTube. My brother did go and see it and tell me that it was amazing and incredible.
Okay, so you've seen the scenes and your brother saw the movie. Jeff, Bobby,
I've seen the opening scene, but that's about it.
Okay,
I have not seen the movie, but Nikki can tell you about a YouTube video that she found that seems like an illegal video of the scene.
Now taken down, yes.
Yeah.
So
Understand.
Nikki, you saw some scenes that were cut out of the movie, but
No, I
somehow
just
got
saw-
leaked on YouTube.
So basically, the video that I saw was somebody just recording it in the theater, and they posted it online.
Wow.
And it was just opening, so it's just the stuff that we did. I didn't see anything else.
Okay.
Oh,
All
okay.
right.
Okay. But we were loaned a small model, a sculpture, what we would call a maquette of this creature, all painted bright neon green, so that we would have it as a reference for scale to place in the model and make sure that the roadways were big enough to fit this and removable.
The stand-in monster.
Yes. Yes.
So
Stand-in's a lot cuter than the ultimate like makeup job they did. I just want to
right.
like it looks a
Yeah.
lot more friendly in the shop.
Yeah, and to add further context to this, so that they could keep it in an upright position, this person okayed them putting a noose around his body part so it could be puppeteered
Wowzers.
through the shot. Yeah. I'm trying to keep it.
Hey, look, guys,
it's a family
right
show.
away. Listen, I know, and without getting gross or anything, but
let's
away,
not.
what I'm not hearing from anybody is that they had explicit instructions for you guys to sand everything smooth
No.
and cover it in silk.
No.
So there are no splinters.
This
They
is
like
Jackass.
squid.
This is Jackass. Yeah, they were hoping that he would get hurt by our.
Yeah, you're
Exactly.
right. That's me talking. That's me
Yeah.
thinking about what I would want.
In fact, the video that Nikki found, there it ends with a reptile, a real reptile.
Oh no,
kind
no,
of
no, no.
going at it. So
Oh my.
So Stacey was not really into the model.
Yes.
Ah.
So as we worked on this, knowing what it was, I would walk around the shop and just I would just go, I worked on Titanic.
Yeah. And now look at me.
Yeah.
Golly,
Exactly.
was any of you guys on set for this special day? No, anyone?
Well, I know that our shop supervisor, our fearless leader, Carl Horner, and our other buddy, Chris Hooten, who is not here today and was invited and went missing in action, didn't respond to any text messages for the last 2 days.
Wow. Putting them
Chris-
on blast here.
call it down.
Here, you heard it
On
here
full
first, folks.
blast. On full blast. He was supposed to be here, but Chris and Carl went on set, and they said it was quite a zoo.
Yes.
A zoo. It was like utter
Right.
chaos, because it's not just the filming of it, but it's the people involved that make it more chaotic. I'm certain the film crew and everything were professionals, but when you have the Jackass crew there, things go awry. From
I
what
was just going to ask how the
that-
catering
that's
was.
from
That's
what
all.
Chris and Carl told us.
Were there
Things
hot
went
dogs?
awry. I
I
remember.
wasn't going to go there, Bobby, but sure, why not?
That Polish sausage.
Yes. I remember Carl saying something about the gurney that they used for putting the person on to lift them up into the model from underneath turned out to be too big. So they were having a hard time getting it to go underneath the model between the leg supports that were holding it. And that's just a mistake on the production's end, a really costly, a really time and money costly mistake, because you want to do this as quickly as possible and get the shots done as well as possible. Bobby,
so
do you know if was there any like pyrotechnics involved in this?
Oh yeah, we did a bunch of the buildings we had to make out of material so they could be exploded.
I was going to ask how robust you had to make it, and if it had to be breakaway. There it is.
Yeah, it was kind of a combination.
Because I remember near the end of the production, Carl was asking me if I could use some of the molds we had already made for casting some of the buildings to cast them out of. There's this special plaster that we can use in the film business for making things blow up easier, and it's called Pyrocell. It's kind of like a cross between plaster of Paris mixed with Alka-Seltzer, because when you put water to this material, this plaster, it foams, but it also makes it very brittle, and it also makes it very fragile, and it can blow up really easily.
Okay.
But when it blows up, it looks really cool. And I remember having to cast up a few test buildings like that for the effects guys.
Well, back to when you said somebody was coming to do the pyro, that's a big name.
Thane Morris, who's worked on just a ton of stuff as a pyro guy.
What's the big one he's done, just for the audience?
Let's see. I think that he worked on the original Star Wars.
Wow.
Well, yeah, they blew a few things up there.
I know Nova Scotia did, but I think no, Thane Morris definitely worked on Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, and they blew a few things up there. Yeah,
a lot of things.
And then I'm the first thing I ever worked with him on was the first thing I did in the model shop when I started, which was Celtic Pride, because they blew up a miniature of the Boston Garden at the end of the film, and it comes crashing down. So that's the first time I worked with him, like when I just got into the model shop.
Thane Morris worked on Star Wars, Fifth Element, Starship Troopers, Die Hard, Judge Dredd, Aliens 3. So he goes way back. Poltergeist 2.
Oh yeah, he goes way back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So wow. I mean, when you're working with top people, that's, on all elements of a project, that's got to be awesome.
Well, and when they're wanting to fill such a large area full of buildings, and the smaller buildings were actually closer to the camera, and as you went further away from the camera, the buildings got taller and taller, but they also got less detailed. It was decided by our commandant, our chief master in chief, Carl Horner, we would make molds of some of the buildings so we could make castings. And this way they could all be painted up in different patterns so that you can fill it with a lot of buildings which are really the same, but they're all being painted differently so that your eye doesn't really notice that so much.
Well, Bobby, I want to get caught up right now because we've jumped around with it. So it was a model of a city with potentially some specific buildings in it.
Right.
That never materialized. It just became whatever the art directors gave you.
No, that we did end up using. We had to create the movie theater. There were a few buildings.
I scratched with that.
Yeah, that had to kind of match something, but that we didn't really pin that down right away early on. It took a while. It's interesting because at the very beginning, we got a sample town that they sent us. They brought over, and nobody wanted to touch it because they knew what it happened with it, ahead of time. And it had been exploded, burned. It was wet,
nasty.
It was made out of pieces of cardboard, little blocks of wood wrapped in
shoe boxes,
tinfoil.
Wow.
It was terrible, and that was kind of what they were pushing for early on, to match that. But then it kind of went to better buildings, and then it went to really good buildings, and then we ended up doing the foam core building. So it was weird. It was an odd transition.
And just to get an idea for scale, and I would say in the model training world, HO scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And part of the reason for the HO scale is that this way we wouldn't have to buy or custom build so many things. We could buy buildings off the shelf. We could modify them, take molds of them, but just buy stuff, assemble it, paint it.
I would just be thinking that if you guys had said, "Oh no, we're doing Lionel O gauge,"
oh God, it would have been no.
I would have been going, huge. Well. This guy is a superstar,
right?
It was pretty large, though. It was
about what?
Probably.
Yeah, it was about 25 feet square.
Okay, but that's I'm talking vertical height here, folks.
Oh.
Yeah.
We did cheat a little with the skyscrapers in the background. They definitely weren't as tall as they could have been or should have been if they stayed in the same scale.
A little forced perspective, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The model that Bobby was talking about, their test model that they sent over, it came over and like he said, nobody wanted to touch it, but there was a rubber tail that was sitting on the set, and I just told everybody,
my gosh,
nobody touched that, and I picked it up with my oldest tweezers and put it in a deli cup and slapped the lid on it, and I said, okay,
all clear.
We know that at some point it had been attached to something human.
Yes.
And we didn't want to touch it.
I remember my first day on that specific project. I walked in, Carl showed me the model and was like, this is like the original kind of look for it. And I went over to kind of like look at it and kind of inspect and maybe pick something up. He hasn't told me what it was for yet. And I almost picked it up. He's like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And I'm like, why? And then he told me, and I'm like, this is not my first production, like with something like this. So
So Nikki, you had done a production that had similar leanings before?
So when I was an apprentice at a shop, we did some stuff for Trauma, the shop floor company.
Oh. Need you say more? Trauma is all you need to say.
And there were a bunch of puppets that I had to make that were like animal hybrids. So not my first rodeo with this type of content. But you do what you got to do, right?
Exactly. And it really becomes a case of just sheer numbers. I mean, I can't even think of how many. I don't think we kept track of how many buildings there is in it. There's a great picture that we all took. We had one of the guys climb up on top of a ladder and take a picture with all of us who had worked on the model, an aerial view looking down onto the model with all of us in it. And you could use that photo and count off how many how many buildings there are in it. But I think there's got to be over a couple hundred buildings in that.
I've got, and that's the next questions I want to get into is like, all that layout stuff. But maybe can you guys set up what the stunt was? Or did we just dance around that when we were talking about ultimately when you find out why they were moving the road? Can somebody here that's maybe seen the stunt or knows like what was the setup for it? They're going to say, okay, now we're doing, what was the thing they set out to do? What were they calling the stunt?
Nikki sent me the video. So you want to explain what happens in that video, Nikki?
Sure. So basically it's a mashup of shots on the Paramount lot mixed with our model. And it's basically a whole, there's a disturbance and people look up and a bunch of things are exploding. And it's this creature moving its way through the back lot and kind of destroying things and blowing things up and everything. And the monster is, the Pontus.
Got it. So they're reacting. So the actors are reacting to this instead of using CG, they're using practical model because the comedy aspect, the Godzilla, like the old Japanese Godzilla movies where the guy in the suits wrecking the city kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But then they obviously kind of use it as a way of presenting the new players, the new actors. It'll stop on them. That's the scene. Like two of them will be army men, and they stop and freeze, and then they show their names, introducing someone. They've got Wee Man, and they've got different people.
So this is where they're starting the movie with this, right?
Yeah, that's the opening vignette. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And then it's and then they're interjecting moments where they get hurt. Things happen, explosion behind them in slow motion, people flying through the air, stuff flying all over the place, people getting hurt. Those actors, those key players.
Okay, all right. So now getting into the model, right? You've got all these models to build. We've established HO gauge. For everybody at home, just say go to Google HO model train. You can read to your heart's content about the scale. We're not gonna go into it super detail on the scale here, guys. But this is why we have Google. So you have buildings you have to match, but because I'm talking about the model training scale size, were there any off-the-shelf items that you were able to go, this would be a good basis for this and extrapolate from that?
Tons of them were kits.
Awesome. And then how many were like modified, or how many were good out of the box?
So I walked into the break room one day, and there's like a bunch of tables set up, just piled with different model kits that we would pull from and just kind of put together and then kind of paint and build and So that was one of it. And then how many of the resin casts did you make, Max?
A lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of castings.
I some of the buildings you guys assembled, and then I went back and sealed them up using white glue to close up the windows and doors and such so they wouldn't leak. and then I went ahead and I mounted them down onto a piece of foam core so I could then build a box around them and make a silicone mold off of them. I must have cast up at least a good 60 or more buildings, or even just wall sections, because sometimes we had pieces which were just walls of buildings, and that way we could just cast up walls and we could reassemble and make whatever kind of buildings out of just different types of walls with different types of facades and stuff. So again, solid buildings, I must have cast up at least 60 or more, buildings. And we weren't doing them solid because that'd be a lot of wasted resin. I cut blocks of urethane foam, which I put into the mold and then cast around it, so the walls would be about a 1/4 inch thick. But it was so many buildings.
Okay, and then we talked about some forced perspective buildings going off in the distance for scale. How do you guys? I'm just trying to figure out how far back are you going now, and like what is the trigger where you guys where you go, okay, we've got to scale these down to make this look better, and then what material are we going to build this out of? Because obviously the kits don't come forced perspective. So what was that process? How did you guys arrive at that? What did you use? What did you make? How'd you do it?
Well, I can speak to that. This is Bobby. They weren't that forced perspective. They weren't that far off. We only just kind of got close to what the scale should be. And then it was mostly all skyscrapers at that point, because basically the front of the city, it was like a normal city where the outlying areas have smaller buildings and then they get bigger as they go towards the center of town. And so in the background, that's kind of the center of the city. So it was big, taller, somewhere 2.5 feet tall, maybe even closer to 3 feet. And those were all pretty much foam core. We had a couple of resin kits that were probably 18 inches or something like that, or
about that big. Yeah.
And then all the rest of the big stuff we just made out of foam core, and I just basically designed things in Photoshop, rows of windows, and just designed, probably 20 different buildings or versions of buildings, and then I would change them to make another one like it, but slightly different color, different windows, whatever. So most of those were just photocopied paper on foam core.
So not like a vinyl printer, but just like threw it out on the on a regular printer and then just glue it on or tape it on or whatever.
And since we weren't gonna see the ground floors, we didn't have to worry about doors, so it didn't matter.
And a lot of times they were detailed with just a little bit of like laser cut cardboard. So there'd be, if there was like there was one that kind of had this T shape on it, and that was laser cut cardboard, but everything else was just a printout.
Wow.
And Bobby, do you have any idea? Did Carl ever mention to you what the budget was for what we built? I mean, it had to be thousands, if not.
It was big, but I do not recall what it was.
I think I don't know if I'm allowed to say this though.
Well, it's done now, so go ahead and say it, Nikki.
I think what I was told, it was about 300,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
That's a lot of money for a D joke.
Well, yeah. We're like, how many of us? Like 15 working on it at one point.
Yeah.
So it made sense, but it was insane. Once I heard that number, I'm like, wow.
Yeah. And it's not on screen for how long would you say it's on screen, Nikki?
It looks like Nikki just fell off.
Oh yeah, we just. She'll be back.
She'll snap on.
That video that we watched, it's basically a pirated video of somebody watching that whole sequence. And since they kind of stop and go into slow motion and show people and show their names and stuff, I don't know if it's 5 minutes, but it's not too short. But if you add up all the scenes of the model, there isn't that much of it. But
still, think of it.
Dragged out.
They spent $300,000 for a scene that's less than 5 minutes. So they spent like $300,000 for something that's 5 minutes or less for a giant D joke.
Yeah, not unusual though.
No, that's true.
I believe that adds to the comedy.
Yeah,
definitely. Definitely. How long from what you saw of it, how long was the scene involving our model?
I think it was, so the overall arc of it, I think was maybe like 3 to 5 minutes from what I saw. But it was like, I don't know how like actual long our model had the screen time for, but like the overall scene of it was maybe like 3 to 5 minutes. It's like, oh, cool, I painted that building.
Well, my particular favorite little building that I got to work on, there was, and it was it was at that phase when they suddenly decided, because they didn't start the project having us build copies of specific buildings from the Paramount lot. That happened about 3/4 of the way through the project. I seem to remember. But my favorite of the buildings I did, it's on a corner, and it's a real building from the Paramount lot, and you can actually pick it out if you've ever been or visited Paramount Studios in Hollywood, because there is a fake subway station that's right in front of it, and there's these 4 poles which are green with round globe white lights on top of them, and it's, and there's a staircase going down, and that building is a real building on the Paramount lot, and so I got to build that one. So that was my favorite. Bobby, what's your favorite buildings?
Oh, I don't know. I did like doing all of the Photoshop work on the big buildings, just because they were created from scratch. They weren't, just building a kit, or even adjusting a kit, or
because you got to be
something.
creative and make it up on your own.
Yeah, unfortunately they couldn't be too detailed, and I couldn't spend too much time on one design. I would have to do so many of them that it was kind of fun, and I enjoyed doing it, but it was wasn't done as well as I'd hoped. Couldn't spend as much time on it as
Right. How about you, Jeff?
I got to make the theater and then the building right next to it, which are kind of they use it a lot on the Paramount lot. I've noticed it quite a bit, and I got to build both of those and paint both of those. Cool. And even put the little marquee that they use with the actors. So that was a fun one, and I did an interior for a Smash building, and cool. I was supposed to be off of it. And I came in one day, and they were busy on something else, and they were like, well, they need this on set. They're like, well, we don't have anybody to do it. And I was in to pick up my tools, and they just went, clock in. So I clocked in. Wow. And I made this little interior that has a living room and a little bit of a bedroom and a bathroom off the corner, and what you can kind of see of the apartment underneath. And that was kind of fun. And you do see that in the shots. So
that's cool. Cool. And what about Nikki's favorite?
Well, I got to build, I think I did 3 of the buildings from Paramount, but they weren't shown. But I think my favorite thing was painting some of the resin casts. I made a couple look like the restaurant from Bob's Burgers.
Nice little Easter egg for people to find.
Yeah, but I didn't really get to see those.
I started taking some of the leftover castings, because there's this one building that had this beautiful Victorian type of roof and window frames and everything. I thought, you know what, if I take several of these castings together, and I started cutting and hacking them, put it together, and I made this kind of very sort of Addams Family looking house, but I never had any time to finish it or paint it, so it didn't end up going in the model though.
Well, the time frame on this, so it was originally, the original restate was 2019, but was this something they added later, or was this always intended to be in the intro to the movie? When did this come along, as far in the process of them starting to shoot this and the actual release date versus? Do you guys know if this was all?
I think it was always intended to be there, because they had shot all of the live action stuff before we even started.
Oh,
yeah.
So they've probably been working on this for maybe a year or more.
Oh yeah. And then they pushed back the release. It was supposed to have originally gotten released last September.
Oh wow.
And then they pushed it to now.
They had a setback. I guess Johnny Knoxville was injured in a stunt, and that set them back a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember something in the news about that.
Yeah, so you can see it in the trailer for the film. He takes a pretty hard hit by a bull, and I guess it just knocked him out for a while, and they had to kind of postpone things for a bit.
That's right, because actually I remember it was originally supposed to be released for March and then they pushed it back to September, and then they pushed it back again to now to February 2022. So it's been a long way in production. I mean, my goodness, how long ago was it we built this thing? It was almost a year ago.
Yeah, it was almost a year ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
it was
I
just about a
remember I
year
was in
ago.
the casting room, and I had to keep complaining to keep the door shut so it would stay warm, because the resins wouldn't go off very well if it got cold. And I know how cold it gets out in the open shop floor.
Oh, we had during while we were making this, we had a hailstorm there in Sylmar
Oh.
where we were working.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was
Oh my God,
pea-sized
yeah, I
hail, and
remember
it hailed for like 20-30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Wow.
it was just thick on the ground. I mean, it was crazy.
Like a whole bunch of little giant white bolt, like ball bearings.
Yeah, it actually
Pachinko
hurt
ball.
when you're out in it. And we all, of course, went out in it, of course, because it was just
Yeah.
crazy.
It was like the shop's instant snow day. Everybody put down their tools and ran out, and everybody's grabbing their cameras and filming the hail, because we're from Southern California. I've never seen hail this big.
Yeah, not even just our shop, that the big shop. All those guys were coming out with their cameras too, because it was crazy.
I know that I spent like most of the time working on that job, like curled up next to a tiny space heater I brought in.
You were the smart one.
So I guess this is a question from a neophyte. So do you paint as you go, or I guess you'd maybe paint as you go, but then have to go back and do overall touch up? Or is it, how do you guys structure painting?
Bobby, you're the best one to answer that.
Most of the time, things are created, finished, and then painted afterwards. As a painter, I prefer sometimes doing stuff while it's happening, especially if it's stuff that's getting glued together, and because you don't want to have to go and mask something later on. But so there's always kind of a little bit of a rub between people building and people painting, where the painter wants them to leave it apart, but it's sometimes that's not the best way to do it. So the majority of the time, it's built to completion, unless something can be left wild, removed, and then go back on easily. But because some people are like, well, that's the painter's problem to tape it later on and get it painted.
Well, there were so many models in this. A lot of us got drafted to paint a lot. I painted the buildings that I did for the Paramount lot. I got to paint those. And there was one of our coworkers, Trevor, had done. That's a really kind of cool Soho building. And it was a beautiful little model, and I got to paint that one too. That's another kind of favorite of mine too.
I spent most of my time painting, and then I was actually the only one who was small enough to be on top of the model. So whenever things needed to be placed, I had to kind of climb on top of it, and
That's the fortunate part, Nikki, since you were the smallest and the youngest and the thinnest, unlike all the rest of us old fat asses. You actually got to go up on the model and actually play Godzilla on top of the model, because it could withstand you getting on top of it.
that was fun. I do have a new profile picture that I get to post now.
How much time did we spend building this whole thing, Bobby? It was
it was
maybe
month.
Yeah, I was going to say a
3-4
month
weeks.
and a half. Yeah, the whole thing.
It sounds like an incredible lot of detail to cram into 3 weeks.
It was. I mean, and we were working really long days and the weekends to get this thing knocked out.
And a lot of times it takes a while to get it kind of up and rolling. There's, the beginning stage, a lot of planning. You don't want to go too far one direction and then have to kind of backtrack. So dialing it all in and getting it prepped and ready to start moving really fast. So the second half is always longer hours and more.
Well, so is that, you're saying that's three weeks in total, all that planning, or was there all the planning and then it was 3 weeks of actually
There was
building?
probably a week or two of planning ahead of time besides that.
And then then the 3 weeks of frantic model building and painting.
As they like to say, and then they finally pulled the trigger and then we start working on the model.
Right.
We also had people in the metal shop working on it and some other carpenters working on some of the wood, because we built structures that would hold everything up. And so
because the base that all the city sat on had to be custom made a certain way so that it could support itself while the pieces of roadway were taken out, which also then still had to be built strong enough so that it would support itself while they got that gurney to slide the person underneath the model. So there was a lot of pre-planning, and then to get it on site to shoot it on soundstage.
Okay. I liked what going back to the model for a sec here. So I love that Nikki did a tribute to Bob's Burgers, but was she the only one that had fun with the model? Guys, anybody else do an Easter egg here and there?
Well, because of the subject matter that we were dealing with, my wife came up with a bunch of names for businesses. So there was Morningwood Lumber, and I think that one made it onto the model somewhere.
And these were little labels that went on the fronts of buildings.
Right.
I love it.
There was a lot of those, and my wife came up with a list of probably like 30 or 40 names that I took in and gave to Carl, and he thought they were hysterical, and he made a bunch of signs that ended up like all over the model. I don't know if any of those made it into the film or not, but they were made up and they were there.
It's the thought that counts on those.
Yeah, it's a thought that counts.
Yeah.
All right, Bobby. Any fun?
No, but I was involved in those. So in making those signs and trying to make sure that some of them made
you got to be an accomplice.
Scene. A lot of them, I think, ended up not getting put on buildings for some reason. We just ran out of time.
Lack of time.
Plus they're kind of fragile, so you don't want to put them on until the last second, especially the ones that sat on top of buildings. And I think people just forgot about it and just so a bunch of them didn't make it. I did make a little tiki bar because I like tiki bars.
Yeah.
Yay.
So down at the bottom of some of those Photoshop buildings, there are some doors on a few of them, and there was a little bit of signage here and there, but probably never ended up in a scene.
Right. And what about you, Max? What did you make an Easter egg?
I did make an Easter egg, but it wasn't something left in the model. I just wanted to do it, set it up, take some pictures, and have fun knowing that I had done it. Everybody knows I'm a huge Disneyland fan, and especially of Tomorrowland, and especially of the monorail. And I have a toy of the monorail that Disney makes. You can go into any Disney park and store and buy it. I brought it into the shop. I set up the monorail track on the city, and I have pictures of my monorail traveling across the model. But it was not
close to the right
scale. It is. It's a little big for HO. Yeah. It's a little big, but it runs, and I brought it and I took pictures of it on the model.
Awesome.
But our model did have an elevated train.
Yeah.
And some tracks didn't actually run, but we had train tracks in there.
And
there's a scale below HO, Max.
Yeah, that's
engage. That's
so... No, my monorail is bigger than HO.
Yeah, it's bigger than HO.
Yeah.
Don't brag.
I was gonna say I have one too. Me too.
Oh my. Yeah, but it was an awful lot of work. You get really frazzled working such long hours, and it's very intense work. And then you're dealing with the fact that environmentally it was winter and it was cold, like Jeff was saying about the hail. I mean, we would come into the shop and you're wearing like a t-shirt, a sweater, and a hoodie just to stay warm while you're trying to get your hands to do all this small, fine work, which doesn't help when you're trying to get paint to dry or resins to cure or glue to set.
Okay, well, what did we learn from Nikki? What did we learn from Nikki? Bring a space heater.
Exactly.
Bring a space heater.
Yeah, well, I was luckier since I was in the mold room, because the mold room has doors you can close, and I did have a heater that I was using in there, but that was mostly for heating the resin, keeping it warm so it would set up properly. But for the other guys like Jeff and Bobby and Aaron and Trevor and all the rest of the crew, they were just wearing lots of little warm clothes.
Pretty much.
The glamour of Hollywood.
Sometimes the stress will keep you warm.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Wow. And lots of coffee.
You get so did all the model go out all at once, or did they take pieces of it as you got it done? Or
well, the model was disassembled and put on delivery trucks.
Okay.
As big as pieces as they were built to be, moved in one piece, but it wasn't made to be moved all in one piece because it wouldn't fit in a truck.
Okay, so the reason I asked about on set is the people you were talking about earlier, when that all gets plugged back in and stuck back together, and I know about moving plastic models. I've moved a few in my day. Don't things get you need a little touch up on set?
And that's exactly why Chris and Carl went to set with it, to make sure the model got set up properly, and anything that might have gotten damaged, needed a little touch up here and there, they were there to do it.
They had a kit with them, and they could handle just about anything.
Yeah. Chris had said that he had to, I think, put together a whole specific building when he was there. I think that's what he had said, where they made him sit down and do a whole bunch of work, and not just fix something that was broken, but actually make something new on set.
And this is why I wanted to get Chris on the show, because he's the only one of us who went on set.
The concept of that sounds really expensive, because were they filming that day?
Oh yeah, I think so. I don't think they were there ahead of time.
And did they film that building that day?
Yeah, they were.
Don't filming. Know. Not sure.
We should find that out and
quite possibly, if they needed it, they don't tend to say like, "Oh, we're going to need this tomorrow." When they're on set, they're like,
"Yeah, well, it just sounds expensive." Like, okay, we're all here, everybody's here. Hey, can you build a building? We'll wait, but go ahead.
Because wasn't this
usually
very well known? Wasn't that director there? Wasn't it Spike Jonze?
Yeah,
that's right. I still remember I remember Chris Hooten mentioning that Spike Jonze came to visit them shooting.
I'm sure he's a pricey director.
Wow.
Did he actually shoot it though?
Expensive.
Did he actually shoot our model?
I don't know. I think so. I don't know if there were multiple directors, or if there was, if he was, overseeing the whole thing. I'm not sure.
Wow, that's an expensive person to hire to shoot a model.
And to make wait while you make the model.
Yeah. Well, no, they wouldn't wait for Chris. I think if I remember right, what Chris said is that he found a little area off in one corner where he was working while they were continuing to set up the lights and rehearse things. And I think they did shoot some stuff, but they're not going to sit there and wait for Chris.
Good.
No.
So the next question is, so they get it built. Does anybody know if that made it into the final cut? Was it worth it?
I don't know.
No. Okay.
But quite often you spend a lot of time on something. You could spend a week on something, and they'll come in and tell you it has to be a little more to the left, a little more to the right, a little bigger, a little smaller, a little darker, a little sassier, and then it's never seen. And they just waste money left and right in this business. Or it's so far in the background, it's fuzzy and it's a silhouette, and you couldn't tell what color it was anyways. So
yeah.
There is a point though, as a model maker, that I've had these kind of things when they want something. They go, wouldn't it be cool if we had this in the shot? And then there's no model for it. And you get I've done models over lunch periods and had them on the set, when they came back, and that's when they think you're a miracle worker, because it doesn't
they don't
have to be perfect,
pay us
but they
like
love
we're a
it.
miracle worker.
No.
Montgomery Scott, miracle worker, right?
In the moment you're a miracle worker, but then they forget your name immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And you don't even get your name in the credits.
Again, back to the glamour of Hollywood. Well,
oh yeah. What? And leave glamorous Hollywood?
There's no such thing as movie magic. It's just called overtime.
Right. Oh wow. Well, hey, you know what? I think this has been an amazing conversation, don't you, Max? I think we kind of.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm so lucky I get to work with such fun people.
Yeah, everybody seems great.
I'm so lucky that all of our staff in the model and prop shop at Vision Scenery are such fun people to work with.
Great. Well, I personally want to thank each of you, Bobby, Jeff, and Nikki, for coming, and I'm sure the audience is going to love this, because I love hearing all this behind the scenes stuff on things like this. So this is This has been fantastic for me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for
You're welcome. Thank you.
And everybody, I think it's important that we give another shout out to the shop, our esteemed head honcho, Mr. Carl Horner, who is the head of the special model and prop shop at Vision Scenery here in wonderful, sunny San Fernando, California. Bobby, why don't you give us a brief rundown of some of your different credits?
Back in the 90s, I did scenic work in the 90s, and I worked for Isolated Grounds. I worked for Ready Sets and Jet Sets, and I was doing a lot of movies back then. But quite often, when I first started in the industry, what they would always say is, "Why do you care what movie it is? Why are you asking?" Literally, they would get mad at you for asking what you're working on. And I don't understand how you could be in this industry or want to be in this industry, but then be so jaded and so hate the industry that I don't care what I'm working on. I'm just getting paid. That's not the way I think.
I don't think many people think that.
Hey, nowadays they might not even pay you. Like I've had to deal with that a couple of times.
Wow.
It's a passion project. You should want to work on it.
We had that happen to us way back when we worked on Waterworld. The production ran into money problems, and a lot of shops weren't getting paid. Their checks were bouncing, and we just told them, fine, well, then we're not going to send you your next shipment of props and such until we get a check that clears. And boy, does that check clear really quick after that. Jeff, why don't you give us a rundown of some of the highlights of your career? What year did you start in the Foley business, and when did you switch over to the model making, and what were some of your credits?
I started in Foley in the 80s, but didn't become a professional until Hook. That was like my first screen credit. My first job was Child's Play 2. But I didn't get a screen credit on that. But I got my first screen credit on Hook. And then there was a writer's strike, and I took a job at a model shop, effects place called VIFX, which isn't even around anymore. And there I got into the model shop, and that's how I kind of switched careers. And I started there, and I worked on the Shining miniseries that ABC did, because Stephen King hated the original Shining,
the movie.
I worked on Men in Black, Alien Resurrection, Titanic, From the Earth to the Moon.
Great.
That's awesome.
Reign of Fire.
Oh wow.
Elf. That's a big one.
Oh yeah.
I did stop motion on that. So I did puppets and.
Isn't that how you ended up meeting Ray Harryhausen?
Yeah, I got to meet Ray Harryhausen when I was working on Elf, because he came by because he was a friend of the Chiodo brothers.
He does a voice on there somewhere.
Yeah, he was supposed to do the voice of the narwhal, which was one of the characters, the animated characters. And I painted the snowman and all of his replacement faces, and those were already filming. And then we were also working on the Simpsons Christmas special, which had 2 stop motion sequences in it. One that was kind of Rankin and Bass, and another one that was like California Prunes, which was the Simpsons
instead of the California
Raisins. And I happened to be working on one of those sets when Ray came in, and I was able to meet Ray, and it was really a gift to be able to talk shop with Ray instead of just just saying hi and I love your work, and he came over and told me the story. He didn't like to work with clay because he hated the fingerprints, and it's something you read Ray talk about all the time. Every interview he would mention that kind of stuff.
Do you have any pictures of yourself? Did you get a picture with Ray? No,
but he was just lovely. Had he was like late 80s or something when I met him, and still had an incredibly firm, strong handshake, and just a delight to get to meet him while I was working.
Oh, that's really so cool that you got to meet him in a work situation. I mean, I got to meet him, but it was at a convention. I know Bob Burns, and Bob Burns is like super best friends with Ray Harryhausen, and because of that, I did get to meet him on a little bit more of a personal basis, because I explained to him that I worked in the business, and he had Willis O'Brien's original stop motion animation skeleton for King Kong with him, because Willis O'Brien was Ray Harryhausen's mentor, and he had gifted to him, and Ray Harryhausen had given the armature to Bob Burns. And so I got a picture of myself with Ray Harryhausen holding that armature built for the original King Kong. But
there you go.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but not nearly as cool as you getting to meet him and get to talk shop about the work.
It really was a gift. It was a gift.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I did squid out a little bit, and I asked one of the brothers to get me his autograph when they were doing the ADR with him, and they did. He signed something for me.
Oh, wow, nice.
That's cool. Well, what other big highlights after that? You must have done lots of others.
That's it. There's nothing after that. That's it.
Like other movies?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Or TV shows or commercials. If not, I'll ask Nikki.
I worked on Titanic and
that little film.
Bicentennial Man.
Oh wow.
Bicentennial Man was awesome.
It was that was kind of fun to work on Bicentennial Man. We did a bunch of miniatures for that. Titanic, we just did the engine room sequence. That was wow. Because at the end of Titanic, there was every shop in the city got a little piece of Titanic because it was like this rush to the end, and our shop got the engine room, and it was kind of fun because they were doing so much. There was also green screen stages where we were, and we were shooting the model off in a little corner. And it was like all screened off, and we had the smoke machines going in there. But then when we'd break for lunch, we'd come out, and there'd be these guys running around on green screen scaffolding in the work clothes, for the engineers and the stokers and all of that. You walk out there and you'd watch them crossfade the monitor for the model that you shot the day before, so they could see how the guys would look in it. Right. And it was like, normally you weren't there for any of that. That's usually, that's over in a completely different place. But it was really kind of fun to be able to walk out and watch that. And then they had catering for us, and that never happens when you're a model maker, hardly ever.
Oh gosh, no.
They had actors on the stage. There was catering, and we all got lunch. And
so you're saying you did the reciprocating motors? That scene where they're running around oiling the motors?
Yeah, exactly. That was the miniature.
Wow.
We did.
I've always wondered about that shot. I could tell that it was green screen, but I couldn't tell what they were doing. So that was a model. How big were those motors? Like 3 feet?
That model was probably about 6 feet deep and about 3.5 feet tall. And then we built a big set extension and here's another, example of, every shop got a piece of that. Was the model came into our shop, and we were a union shop and a model shop that had originally done that, like the big motors part. They couldn't bring their guys in because
wow.
And so basically we got that part. We built all the scaffolding and a big set extension. So there was a bunch of foreground stuff that they put people into. Yep. And so we did all of that. So we did, so it was just like I said, everybody in town got pieces of Titanic as it was like, as they were working to finish it.
That's an impressive shot. It really is. I mean, it's one of the
when they slam it into reverse and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Nikki, you being the youngest, why don't you tell us about your background and how did you get started, and what are some of the other projects you worked on?
So when I was in college, I did some construction for Not Scary Farm, which was pretty cool. I did a lot of theater and immersive stuff. I was working at an effects shop for about 6 months, and I did stuff for Trauma and some stuff for conventions. What else? My first big show, I was an art PA for Malibu Rescue, and I built a model of Malibu for them. And that's actually one of the things that got me hired at Vision. And then right after that, I helped build the new backlot for Santa Clarita Studios. So I was building the model for that and in the office, and I got to work with Will Batts, who was the set designer for Buffy and for Firefly. Along with Randall Groves, who's an incredible art director. I owe them so much. So I did a bunch of model building for them. And then I did an immersive bar that was like a wizard theme, which was pretty chill. And then the pandemic hit. And then Carl called me up, and the first job I did with Vision was actually Small Fortune, which was cool, which is when I met all of you guys. And then I've been working for Vision and Atomic Ant doing commercials and stuff. Chris and I actually did a Die Hard commercial. We built a battery for that in like 2 days. We also all did like the Super Bowl halftime show last year, which was incredible. And yeah, just a lot of smaller ad campaigns and stuff like that.
So what year did you start in the business then?
So I for film and stuff, my official start would be like September of 2018.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm 26, I've done a Super Bowl, I've done Jackass, I've done all these really cool projects, and like it just blows my mind that I've been able to do this. And I'm also so grateful to have you guys as coworkers. I've learned so much from all of y'all. Like, it's incredible.
Thank you.
You guys are great.
It behooves us to help, the younger model makers and stuff gain the skills. I still learn stuff when I go on films. I'm always asking guys advice, and I learn something new all the time. So it's just really important to pass that stuff on.
Yeah, especially to all the younger people, because they're, unfortunately, model making is somewhat of a dying art. And so it's important that other newer people get to learn the same stuff from us that we've learned from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a woman coming into this industry, it's very male dominated, along with like the carpentry, because I used to build scenic stuff too. And I've just been so grateful for how great you guys have been. Like, I'm always nervous going into a new work environment, because I've had some bad experiences, but you guys have always welcomed me with like open arms, and I really appreciate you guys.
Oh, thank you. And I don't think the model making industry is really like female exclusive on purpose. It's just that for the most part, guys like to build little models, and most girls don't seem to have that ambition. So it's wonderful to see women like yourself who have that desire and interest, because anybody can do it. You just have to have the time and patience to learn. It
has a lot to do with people not encouraging it when we're younger. Because like it took me a while to find out like, oh, I could do this for a job.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
And it's fun.
Because I've always been into it. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's a lot of work, and people say you never work a day in your life if you love what you do. It's work. It's 100% work.
It is. It's a lot of work, but you know what? As I'm so happy when the object is done and you get to stand back from and go, we all built that. That thing didn't exist without us, and look how cool it is.
Exactly.
One last thing though, Bobby, did we ever find out what happened to the model after they were done?
No, but if you look at that YouTube footage, I think they destroyed.
You don't want it.
Oh no, I'm just curious.
Don't want it back.
There are a lot of boxed up buildings at the shop up in
we got back.
In the rafters. Yeah, we got them back. Yeah. We got a ton back.
Wow.
I don't know how many people took home for souvenirs or whatever, but we got a ton.
Well,
back.
that probably while it was there on the set, and they said, "Okay, that's it. We're all done." I wouldn't be surprised if people came along and said, "Oh, I want this one."
Right. I would have pilfered my favorite building if I knew where it was.
Yeah,
Me too. So, well, I think with that, we've come to the end. Don't you, Kevin?
I think we've done it.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming on board. This has been so much fun.
Hopefully we gave you something that you can edit together for some decent.
I believe me. There's more stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff will be like, "Wasn't I there?" Wait.
Yeah.
20 years later, we're still doing the same stupid.
If they trust us to go to the bathroom, they're less intelligent than I thought.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone once again for joining us on this episode, Max. And it looks like we have many more listeners since our downloads jumped way up. We're always looking for more listeners who would like to go behind the scenes with us. So please help share the show, people. We would love to get, we love sharing with you, and we'd love it if you would share with your friends and family as well.
Definitely. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your pets, tell anybody.
Yeah, anybody that'll listen to you. And if they do, then also tell them to visit us on our Facebook group. That's the Max EFX Facebook group page. They tell them to like us, tell them to share it, whatever you can do. We want to get the word out about Max's amazing career, and we would love to have your help. We'd also love to hear your feedback. Please comment on the show. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear questions. Or you can even direct message us on our Facebook page as well. With anything you got for us, please.
Yeah, if there's any questions people have that they want to ask, we can be more than happy to answer them on our Facebook group. And even if they have suggestions for topics.
Ooh, see, now there's something. Give us an idea for a topic or something you want us to answer on the show. We'd love to hear from you. And there is another way, a little roundabout, but it'll still get to us. You can tweet us at Skywalking Pod and use the hashtag MaxEFX. We haven't got one of those yet. Who wants to be first? We'll see how that works, how the Twitter machine works. We are part of the Skywalking Network, Skynet, where you can also find other great shows like classic Marvel Star Wars comics and the new YouTube show Collectopolis, the Neverland Clubhouse, the Resilience Squadron, Star Warsologies, Talking Apes, Totally Tell Me Everything, and the flagship show Skywalking Through Neverland. Oh, and by the way, look for the new Skywalking Network YouTube show, Today in Star Wars History, your daily Star Wars history lesson. Until next time, this is Kevin.
And this is Max.
And that's a wrap.
And we're clear.
Check the gate. Print.
And nobody says check the gate anymore because everything is done digitally.
Digital, yeah.